To roll or not to roll, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the ones and twenties of outrageous fortune or give answer to a sea of questions, and in the answering end all mystery. I wasn't a drama kid in high school, I was an art kid, but I do have a soft spot for Shakespeare. I did a video about the things that I enjoy in the players at my table, and in the comments of that video, there was a good discussion about whether a dungeon master should allow a roll when the maximum result that a character could get would still result in a failure. And the discussion made me think about some of the things that I do as a dungeon master and why. I'm James, I've been a dungeon master for 25 years, and in addition to butchering Shakespeare, I occasionally talk about the things I think about and plan for my tabletop role-playing games. If you like that kind of content, then there's buttons down there for like and subscribe. There is default wisdom that is provided by other dungeon masters and the DMG about when a dungeon master should allow a roll, and that comes in two parts. Number one, do not ask for a skill check unless you as a dungeon master believe that there's a reasonable chance of success or failure with the check. What is reasonable is going to differ from dungeon master to dungeon master. For myself, I don't think there's a reasonable way, no matter what you roll in the persuasion check, to get a king to give up their crown. That's just not something they're going to be willing to do, certainly not with just one check. Then there's the idea of super low things that you might ask for. If it's anything below a DC 5 was the usual advice. For myself, it's anything below like a DC 8. Take a wizard that's trying to jump over a 5-foot pit. Is it possible that a wizard could fail the roll to jump over a 5-foot pit? Yes, they probably don't have a bonus to their strength score. They don't have proficiency in athletics. The pit could be uneven. It could be slippery. There's lots of ways that you could explain it narratively. But does it feel to the player as if they're playing a competent adventurer? No, probably not. To many people, it just feels kind of petty when the dungeon master asks for a check that has that low a DC and then they fail at it, if it even causes minor damage. I would say it should never just be a pit. There should be like orcs that are coming around shoving you in a pit, or there should be a slime that's going to grab you with a pseudopod and pull you down in the pit. Or it should be like a 20-foot pit that you have to get something at the bottom of it, and there's like a gelatinous cube stuck in there and you don't see it coming. There should be never just a pit, but that's in counter design, and we're talking about skill checks. Second part of the answer, never ask for a skill check if failing that skill check would result in a bottleneck where the adventure cannot proceed. Adventure shouldn't be written where there is only one skill check between the adventure grinding to a halt and getting to continue on. But maybe the adventurers missed every other clue. They didn't see them coming, they didn't understand what those things were, and they didn't check them, or maybe they failed all those. Whatever it is, you are now left with one skill check between the adventure totally grinding to a halt or getting to play for the next 3 hours, and you need a solution to it. There are some solutions that are more satisfying than others. You could have an NPC say,
"No time! I found a clue that could unlock all the secrets of history!"
This feels very Deus Ex Machina, and that's to be avoided in screenwriting, in novel writing, in running Dungeons and Dragons game. It will get the adventure moving on, it just doesn't feel very good. You could try moving the clue, but sometimes it's very obvious that you've done that, and the players don't typically like that either. You're just arbitrarily moving the clue wherever you need to so that we can find it because our rolls are so bad. Of course it's arbitrary. I wrote the adventure. I arbitrarily put the clue with the first location. Why is it different if I move it over here? The players still feel like they're fudging things, and you're not going to convince them not to feel that way, so don't move the clue if you don't have to. The general answer is, if it comes down to it, just give them the answer. But that can feel very railroady. If we figure out the locations that Dungeon Master intends us to go, we can go there, and then they will give us all the answers, the plot coupons, and then we can turn it in for the climax of the adventure. If it's come down to just giving them the answer, in my opinion, a better option is to make it a motivated answer. You're going to give the answer to whichever character has the highest ranks in whatever skill check you are going to ask for. A classic low-level adventure is to find out who in the town is a werewolf. The adventurers are outside a barn. They missed every clue so far, or they rolled badly, whatever it is, this is the last clue between them and a dead end. And you're hoping that they will find werewolf tracks here that will lead them to their culprit. The adventurers are a cleric, a rogue, a sorcerer, and a barbarian. And you want to give them werewolf tracks. So you say, "Hey Conan, while the cleric, the rogue, and the sorcerer are inside the barn looking for any clues they might find, you're more of a naturalist. You survived in the wild, you're familiar with tracking, and you notice some odd tracks in the mud. They've got toe prints in the ball of the feet, but the heel never enters in the mud. They're definitely human, though. Following them for a few hundred feet, you notice that on the way, there's these marks at the end of the toes, and the footprint is getting larger. By 200 feet, it's completely changed. It's no longer human, it's definitely lupine. You're still giving them an answer, but now it's a motivated answer. It's motivated by choices that the player made back during character creation. It matters to the adventurer that they chose to play a barbarian and that they chose to put their proficiency in survival. Otherwise, it's just, I'm giving you answer because I need you to know answer, and you could have picked anything. It's always better if the player's choices matter. As a dungeon master setting up a skill check, you are trying to set up an inflection point, a moment beyond which the adventure changes based on the choices that the player made. For that to be the case, though, you need to make sure that the choices are all equally viable. And if a skill check is going to be a guaranteed success, that is going to be what the players do, and that is no longer a choice. That's the right answer. For that to be the case, for you to set it up in which they have to legitimately consider whether they want to risk the skill check, you need to take into account all the resources that the players have. Magic, technology, magic items, whatever that is in your game system, you're going to have to consider it. Imagine that you have a bunch of players that are trying to stealth into a Dvergar King's castle to rescue a prisoner, but they don't want the Dvergar King to know about it. This is now a stealth adventure. They are level 4 adventurers. There's a druid in the party, which means that they have access to pass without a trace. That is going to give them a +10 to their stealth rolls. If that is enough to bypass the guards, the druid and the rogue will just wander through the entire castle. They will unlock the door. They will lead out the prisoner, and then the adventure is over. Gee, that was a lot of fun. It is fine, although maybe a little bit boring, if they pick stealth as their answer to every problem as they try to get to the prison cell to unlock whoever this prisoner is, as long as they are on a knife's edge everywhere they go, as long as they feel like they're riding this catastrophe wave and that they could be discovered at any moment. Metal Gear Solid is a classic stealth game, and what you're aiming for is that moment in Metal Gear Solid where a guard goes. That forces the players to reconsider their options and try to find a solution to this guard that is now approaching and may discover them. Could we use an illusion spell to disguise ourselves as members of the King's Guard? Could we maybe bluff our way out of this? If I just kill the guard, is there a locker room that I could just hide his body in somewhere? Wow. The fear that you're going to be discovered by the very next guard and this is all going to come crashing down around you is what makes those kind of stealth games fun. And for that to happen in a game like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, you're going to have to account for spells like Pass Without a Trace to some degree. You don't want to nerf it completely. Taking Pass Without a Trace was a choice. They spent a spell slot on that, and you want them to feel like that mattered, not like you're just going to move the bar whenever it's convenient for you as a dungeon master. For me, I would give the guards like a +3, maybe as much as a +5 to their perception score. They are, after all, the King's elite guards. They're guarding whoever this prisoner is that they're trying to rescue, but also the treasury and the king himself. They're good at their jobs. And that way, there's still this chance of catastrophe. The cleric that is disadvantaged from the plate mail, probably doesn't have a ability bonus in dexterity and isn't proficient in stealth, is likely to stumble and fall somewhere in this dungeon, and it will all come crashing down and the guards will come in and everything can go wrong, which is what's fun in those adventures. They still feel like there's a risk involved to the choices that they're making. Skill dogpiling is a thing that happens in TTRPGs where one character tries something, they fail, and every other player at the table tries to roll that same thing. Let's imagine that a rogue is trying to find a secret door in a room, and everyone sees the rogue roll a 2, and they're pretty sure that they just failed their perception check. So every other player at the table goes, can I try? Can I roll perception? Can I roll perception? A lot of dungeon masters hate skill dogpiling because it feels almost exploitative. These characters and the rogue that just failed the perception roll do not know that they just failed a roll. This paranoia exists only in the players' heads. It is meta to what is happening in the game world, and that ruins some of the immersion for us. But there are games that embrace this. 2024 D&D says, go ahead and let the barbarian roll an arcane check if they want to. It's funny if they succeed on the roll when the wizard, the expert, has failed, and that can be interesting to tell those stories. That is a legitimate style of play. I don't happen to play that way anymore, but it's very beer and pretzels, hijinks, Monty Python-esque. If you want to do that, go right ahead. But for the people that want a more immersive, grounded style of the game, it does kind of almost ruin the class fantasy that we want, where the expert does things. You, rogue, go over there and check that door for traps. I'm going to see if this body is some sort of an undead that's going to come to life and eat our brains, and the wizard is going to check that for arcane runes to make sure it's not some sort of spell that's going to go off, while the warrior goes over there and tries to barricade the door to make sure that the monsters can't come in here while we take a long rest. That honoring of the role and the specialization makes it feel like it mattered what I chose to play as a player, that it matters that I played a wizard versus a barbarian versus a rogue versus a sorcerer or a monk or whatever. But I'm not sure that every time every player asks to make the same skill check that it is skill dogpiling. Or if it is skill dogpiling, I'm not sure all skill dogpiling is bad. Imagine at the end of adventure, you're facing off against the big bad of whatever this adventure is. And that person, let's say that it's an evil warlock of Orcus or something, runs down the hall into their secret lair, and the adventurers a step behind follow. They don't see what happens as he enters the lair because they are a step behind, but the rogue makes their passive perception check and they hear the click of a door closing. As they come around the corner, the rogue makes an investigation check to find the secret door, but they roll a 2. They can't find it, but they did hear it. So it seems perfectly reasonable to me that the rogue would go spread out and see if you could find it, hoping in the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons that the investigation check of all of them together would find this secret door. That doesn't feel like skilled dogpiling to me because this paranoia that there's a secret door is now motivated by having heard the click. That's no longer meta to the players. The characters are aware that there's something there. Like everything in a TTRPG, I'm not sure that there's one answer, that it is always this way or always that way. You can't get one rule to rule them all. Some of the commenters felt like it was unfair of me to allow a player to roll if the maximum result that that character could make would not be capable of overcoming the challenge of the skill check. And I give the example of a portcullis. Imagine a portcullis at the end of this adventure where you're trying to escape the Dwergar fortress, and it is made of adamantine. And the barbarian is often engaged with the Dwergar while the rogue and the wizard try to figure out what they're going to do about this gate. And the wizard asks if he can try an athletics check to lift the gate. How hard would it be to lift an adamantine gate? It is definitely going to be heavy, and it's dwarven made. Maybe like a DC 30. There's no way anyone in the party is going to make that. Like a DC 25. I'm setting the DC on the portcullis's terms and what I believe is a risky but accomplishable feat for the most likely person in the party to accomplish this. In this case, the barbarian. I want it to be risky for them to call the barbarian off from holding the Dwergar to try to lift this gate so that if they fail, they're going to have to face the Dwergar coming in, or they're going to have to come up with a different answer and not just keep trying this over and over again. And if a wizard tries to do this, they probably don't have a bonus to strength, and they're probably not proficient in athletics. It'd be a very weird wizard, but I don't know, maybe that's what you want to do. Go ahead and play whatever you like. The highest that the wizard is going to be able to roll, even with guidance, is going to be a 24. That's not going to be enough. But if the barbarian is called over with guidance and average roll, they probably have like a +9, which means 16 is what they need to lift the gate. That's still pretty risky, but it is plausible. And that's all I'm aiming for, so that they have to weigh their options and go, do we try that? Do we try climbing over the gate? Do we use like a high level spell, pass Earth Stone, so that we can form a gateway and just march out there? The Dwergar are going to be able to follow us. I want them to weigh the risks and rewards of the situation. And I want the barbarian, if they decide to lift the gate, to feel like they needed the barbarian here. This is what I was here for. This is what makes my character special, in the same way that I would want the wizard to feel special when he's identifying some arcane ritual. I don't want the barbarian to just come in and go, ha ha, I rolled a natural 20. I absolutely know that that's a ritual to resurrect Demogorgon or something. Something that James Reza 2640, I hope I'm getting that name right, mentioned that I've never personally done, but I kind of like this idea, is what if the difficulty of opening this, whatever it is so high because it's for later? I don't really plan adventures that far in advance, but I like the idea that maybe they're going after some weird evil cult, a cult of Cthulhu or something, and they discover this weird Cthulhu puzzle box, and the rogue at level 4 or something is unable to pick the lock. It's like a DC 30 or something, that later they might be able to pick the lock. And I could put whatever I need in there. I don't know what's in the box, but level 6, level 10, whenever they finally go back to that box, I can stick whatever's in there. It's basically Schrodinger's box from his cat. And the rogue doesn't need to know that. And now they feel really special about having remembered that they have that box. And if they keep trying time after time, and it's a mystery that they're going, just another level, just another level, just another level, and I can finally figure out what's in that box, that is a powerful motivator to get the player keep coming back to level up. Although now you've got a lot of pressure on this box, so, be careful. I think there's also a little bit of a difference, maybe psychologically or something, in how dungeon masters communicate to a group and what the people on the other side of the screen, the players, hear when that is said. Let's say that there is a wizard that is trying to open this adamantine gate and the dungeon master wants to tell that wizard no. When they say no to that wizard, the barbarian thinks that they're talking to them as well, and they won't even ask because they already got told no, even though the dungeon master was really only addressing the wizard. But you said, no, we couldn't open the gate. No, I said no to the wizard, not to you. Well, why couldn't the wizard try it? The wizard, even with all the bonuses, could not possibly reach a 25 to open the gate, and I didn't feel like I was going to jerk them around and say, hey, yeah, you can try, only for them to fail. Oh, well, I thought you were just saying that it was impossible. It is easier and cleaner, in my opinion, when communicating mechanics and what could or could not be tried if I just address the whole group, not just the player that's asking the question. And when the wizard fails to do this and the barbarian comes over, maybe that's a little bit of skill dogpiling. But again, to me, that's motivated, so I don't have a problem with that. It makes sense that a barbarian might go, move aside, wizard, let me try to do this. Barbarian, bro lifts. If the wizard player feels like I misled them, that sucks. I don't like that, but it's a price that I am personally willing to pay to communicate to the whole table and make sure no one misunderstands what I am saying is possible or not, regardless of which character is trying it. It is my hope that when I give them mechanical information, I'm not talking in narration or doing a voice for an NPC, that they understand I'm talking mechanics and that they will pull their resources, because it is an ensemble cost, it's a cooperative game, and come to the best solution for their characters in the moment. If they don't consider every magic item, every feat, every character ability, every spell that they have at their disposal, that's not my fault. It is not the job of the dungeon master to solve every problem for the players, but it is part of the dungeon master's job to provide problems that are possible for the players to solve. Until next time, dungeon masters, remember, you're a player too. Try to have some fun.